Straight ahead, paving the way, a Texas bill would make it easier to build a border wall as President-elect Donald Trump is set to re-enter the White House. Back to the border after Trump won in Texas border counties, our Ken Molestina returns there to hear what residents are saying about the new administration taking power. One-on-one, Senator John Cornyn tells us how Republicans on Capitol Hill plan to pass Trump's agenda quickly. Speaker showdown. There's a new Republican speaker at the Texas Capitol, but many grassroots conservatives aren't happy about it. We'll ask what impact this will have on getting things done. Good Sunday morning from the Texas Capitol. I'm Jack Fink. Get your fix for Texas politics. Eye on Politics starts now. Hello and welcome to Eye on Politics. We're in Austin for the start of the 89th legislative session. From here to Washington, D.C., lawmakers from Texas are back at work, and one of the top priorities remains border security. As President-elect Donald Trump is set to return to the White House, there's a new Texas bill filed that would make it easier to build the border wall. We spoke with the bill's author, Republican State Senator and Senate President Pro Tem Brandon Creighton of Conroe.
In Texas, we have to continue working on our border enforcement plan because either way you look at it, this administration will be there for 4 years, but protecting Texas and all Texans at our southern border is not on a 4-year expiration. That's permanent, right? So our bill would make sure that we have the legal authority through the entity, the Facilities Commission, that's charged with handling the border wall, that entity have the legal authority to build an entire wall with no gaps, and my legislation is the only bill this session that will allow that.
So we're talking about eminent domain, giving the state eminent domain authority.
Correct, just as we do for highways, roads, dams, and bridges, keeping people safe, building necessary infrastructure to provide for the safety of all Texans, which is what my oath under the Constitution is all about. And we have to make sure that if we spend billions of dollars of taxpayer money to build a wall, that we don't have gaps in that wall. Otherwise, we don't need one.
How big of an issue has that been? Because property owners right now don't have to sell, obviously, their property or give an easement, whatever, to the state or federal government. Would this apply for both state and federal jurisdictions to come in?
Well, for our state-built border wall, and yes, there is alignment in the working relationship that we'll have with the Trump administration on building the wall, just as there was in his first term. But at the end of the day, Texas has to take care of business no matter who is serving in Washington. And we've made a commitment to the public that we are building a border wall no matter what. And we've spent billions and billions of dollars that we otherwise could have placed into property tax reduction efforts. And if we're going to keep our promises, make sure this wall gets built, we have to make sure we have the legal authority to do so. Yes, we're going to prioritize negotiating with families without condemnation or eminent domain, but we have to have it. We wouldn't have highways or major roads anywhere in this state without it. So it's no different with the wall.
Would there still be compensation for, even if they fought it at the end of the day, if the bill were to pass and if the state does in fact get eminent domain authority, would people still be compensated fairly for their property, or are they going to be lowballed?
Absolutely no, and in fact, without it, it's caused the opposite effect, where the state has zero leverage to negotiate whatsoever, and we're paying exorbitant prices outside of an average of 3 appraisals to accomplish our goals for these easements. So when you're dealing with 9 family members and 5 are attorneys and several of them don't speak, it's very difficult to negotiate an easement that ultimately would end up being what we could build the next section of the wall on.
We spoke with the chairman of the Texas House Democratic Caucus, Representative Gene Wu of Houston, about this bill.
The state already has eminent domain power. but the state has to prove that it actually needs it, and that's actually a smart thing to do. Texas, we've thrown in more than $10 billion into border security in our state, and we have very little to show for it. We have some deportations on buses to other states, but that's not really border security.
Trump's victory in November included big wins in Texas, and even the state's border counties turned red. The number of migrants entering the southern border has recently dropped, but that only happened after a record number of people crossed into the country illegally, creating chaos at times. Our Ken Molestina went to the border to see what people there are saying as the new administration takes office.
Eagle Pass is not the largest border town here in Texas. However, since the debate started about illegal immigration and border security, it has become the center focus of this debate. So we wanted to come back here yet again and talk to folks and see how they're feeling about what is in their future with a new presidential administration, namely the Trump administration.
In this town, with just over 23,000 residents, political opinions are just as bold as the brisket nachos at their most popular barbecue joint, Choches. It's where we met up with two of the town's most vocal advocates in the debate over immigration and border security, Jesse Fuentes and America Garcia Graywall.
The promise right now seems to be more patrols, more security, a shutdown of the border, mass deportations. How is that going to continue to affect your town?
That's why I'm saying the worst is yet to be seen, because what's coming is ugly. And we tried to prepare people for this.
Fuentes is the man behind the unsuccessful lawsuit to remove the controversial border buoys from a small stretch of the Rio Grande, which he claims have disturbed the river and his kayak business. Along with Garcia Graywall, they both have stood up against the heavy military and law enforcement presence that has spurred over the past few years.
You think you'll ever go back to whatever it was like
I have
before
hope.
that?
What this is the greatest theft of tax dollars the state of Texas has ever seen, and soon what the United States has ever seen.
Neither are looking forward to President Trump and Governor Abbott's plans to continue to secure the border.
They see militarization as something positive. But when you have a base to the east, two to the north, one to the south, and then Shelby Park taken over, we're militarized.
While they may not like it, plenty others along this border region do. That might explain why this county, like so many others along the border, flipped, voting red for Donald Trump, something that hasn't happened in recent memory.
For the first time in history of Maverick County, this county went red.
Another county that flipped was nearby Valverde County, home to Del Rio, yet another border town dealing with unprecedented waves of illegal immigration. So we headed there next. It's where I met gun shop owner Gary Humphreys.
Been here in Del Rio for 52 years on the border, and it's not tough doing it, but you got to mind your P's and Q's in the gun business.
He says he voted on a split ticket, Democrats for local leaders, but he wanted Donald Trump, a Republican, in the White House.
Trump getting in there, he's going to bring back all of, remain in Mexico and all of, says he is. I'm sure he'll do that.
And you're looking forward to all of that?
Oh yeah, it's already changed. I mean, since he's been making statements.
For Humphreys, the switch from blue to red in his home county isn't just tied into promises to secure the border, but by the perception that their economy could also one day return to a bustling one, instead of the sleepy business town that some say it's fallen into.
Is that, you think, the main reason why people decided to vote for him? Because they thought that a Trump presidency means more life, more economy back down here on the border?
I do see people voting for him because of that reason, for sure.
Carla Fernandez is a restaurant supply rep in town who says while she didn't vote for Trump, she understands why so many others may believe Trump could improve their economy.
Right now we're at the point where let's just see what happens, we're still gonna keep living, keep working hard, and just be ready for what's to come.
Back in Eagle Pass, Jose Perez, the owner of Doobie's, a legal cannabis dispensary store, explained why he voted red for the first time ever.
My vehicle was at the checkpoint and had been still out on my driveway, and I was not aware,
By an undocumented immigrant?
Yes.
By somebody who crossed
yes,
illegally?
Sir. Somebody out of Honduras. Stole your car. Stole my car.
For immigrant activists, there seems to be a sentiment that while Trump's heavier-handed approach to border security is coming, what is really missing here is effective change in immigration policy.
And if we are having people come into the United States, we're depending on them for our economy, for our jobs, for the food that we eat, for our hospitals, and every single sector of industry, we deserve to protect them as well.
We will resist. We are prepared. And, resistance is important. It's always been in our history. This is nuestra gente, our people. The people of brown skin have always stood up. And I guarantee you, whatever they throw at us, we're going to be there.
Along the southern Texas border, Ken Molestina, CBS News, Texas.
Coming up later, the fight for Texas Speaker ends and some conservatives aren't happy. But next, Senator John Cornyn tells us how Republicans will try to pass President-elect Donald Trump's agenda when Eye on Politics from the Texas Capitol comes right back. Welcome back to Eye on Politics from the Texas Capitol, where the 89th legislative session has begun. We'll have more on that coming up in just a bit. But first, tomorrow is Inauguration Day, when the transfer of power takes place from President Biden to President Trump. The day is filled with pageantry. Sarah Jenkins has the schedule of events in this week's brief.
Inauguration Day begins with a service at St. John's Church. President-elect Donald Trump and Vice President-elect J.D. Vance are scheduled to be sworn in at 11 a.m. Central Time. The swearing in is followed by the official farewell for President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. The first official actions taken by Trump happen in the president's room, where it's a tradition to sign nominations and sometimes executive orders. Then, a luncheon is hosted by the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies. The president will attend 3 inaugural balls that night: the Commander-in-Chief Ball, the Liberty Inaugural Ball, and the Starlight Ball.
With Republicans controlling the White House, the U.S. Senate, and the U.S. House, one of the big questions now is, what is the most effective way to pass Trump's agenda? And there's a difference of opinion. I went one-on-one with Senator John Cornyn to get some answers.
I'm agnostic, really, on whether it's one bill or two bills. I don't think most people get too bogged down in the procedure outside of the Capitol. But the goal is to make sure we avoid a multi-trillion-dollar tax increase, which will occur if we do nothing, if we're unsuccessful. Plus, we also need to deal with our national debt. I've been here a while and we keep talking about it, and people say, well, somebody ought to do something. Well, we're the people who are in a position to actually begin to chip away at that. So passing a budget resolution is the first step. And then getting the various committees of the House and the Senate together to meet those reconciliation instructions, as they're called, to deal with the huge tax increase potential, and then also to deal with some of the excessive spending that's caused us a lot of problems.
And I hear your point as far as, procedure and, people get wrapped up in that.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that the pressure is on the Republicans to deliver. Isn't that right?
No question, no question. Yeah, I don't mean to minimize the differences of points of view, but as you know, there are 450 members of the House and 100 members of the Senate, and then the White House, the president's still ramping up his team. So as soon as we can get the consensus on the best approach forward, it seems to me that Speaker Johnson and Jason Smith, who heads the tax writing committee in the House, and the president are all on the same page. The Senate still is sort of talking about two bills, and I think the sooner we can get on the same page, the sooner we can get down to work.
What executive orders are you expecting from Mr. Trump when he takes office on the first few days? I know that Senate Republicans met with him recently, and so what do you see coming?
Well, I think the border is going to be job number one, and nobody knows better than Texans about the tragedy of the last 4 years, the public health and public safety dangers of the open borders policies of the Biden administration. A lot of that was a result of President Biden going in and systematically dismantling the executive orders that President Trump had put in during his term of office. So I expect President Trump to consider and sign as many as 100 different executive orders on day one. A lot of those will reverse the Biden-Harris policies on the border. And then we're going to need to ramp up the ICE, for example, which is Immigration and Customs Enforcement, that has to deal with people who are here illegally, and also detention facilities, which are going to be important, and has reestablished deterrence when it comes to people coming to the border. So I think that's going to be the emphasis, but there's going to be 100 of them, I think, and so they're going to cover a lot of different subject matters.
I want to ask you about the Laken-Riley Act, which is coming up for a vote. You passed an amendment to that bill this week, and tell me about it and how that amendment fits into the broader bill.
Well, Laken-Riley, as you know, is a young woman who was murdered by an illegal immigrant, somebody who never should have been in the country in the first place. And the Laken-Riley Act is, of course, named after her, and categorizes a number of crimes as priorities for deportation if these illegal immigrants have committed these crimes. Of course, none of them have a right to be in the country, but you got to start somewhere. The amendment I introduced, and which passed overwhelmingly, said that if you assault a police officer, that you should be deported. I think it's common sense. It's shocking to me that 25 Democrats voted against that, but that's part of, I guess those are the 25 who didn't learn anything from the November 5th election. But I'm glad it passed. I expect we will send this to President Trump's desk, and he will sign it into law shortly after he is sworn in.
Are you still committed to running for re-election next year? And if so, how concerned are you about the potential for Attorney General Ken Paxton to challenge you?
I am going to run for re-election. I love my job. I think it's helpful to Texas and Texans to have somebody who has experience dealing with Washington, who's been effective, as I have tried to be, on their behalf. And look, Jack, I've run in a lot of elections, and I've always had primary opponents. The last time I had a primary was I won by 76%. So that goes with the territory. I'm not concerned about it. And it's a free country. Anybody who wants to run can.
After a bitter battle, there's a new speaker as Dustin Burrows leads the Texas House. Coming up, why some lawmakers are not very happy about this when Eye on Politics returns. At the Texas Capitol last week, lawmakers found out there is a nearly $24 billion budget surplus. And while there's going to be a lot of debate over the next 140 days on how to spend it, the most immediate fight, the one for House Speaker, is now settled, and Republicans remain divided about the results.
I declare the Honorable Dustin Burrows of Lubbock County to be the duly elected Speaker of the House of Representatives.
After a contentious battle that split Texas House Republicans, State Representative Dustin Burrows of Lubbock was elected Speaker. In the second round of voting, he defeated his fellow Republican, David Cook of Mansfield, 85 to 55 votes. Records show 49 Democratic representatives voted for Burrows, which is more than the 36 Republicans who backed him.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Burrows struck a conciliatory tone after being sworn in.
I commit to you today, every member will have a voice. Every district will have a seat at the table.
House Democratic Caucus Chairman, Representative Gene Wu of Houston, says most of the Democratic lawmakers back Burrows because they're tired of partisan bickering.
What Democrats have done and what Republicans have done is the people who are reasonable and in the middle and who actually want to fix things have gotten together and saying, forget all the partisanship. Let's work together.
Knowing that you have a strong leader that's, I would say, overwhelmingly supported by 85 votes, I think it sends a good signal to the other branches that the House is independent.
The Democrats just chose who they wanted for Speaker. That's 100% true.
Newly elected Republican Shelley Luther of Grayson County voted for Cook.
I think we gave a good try to get a reformer in the House and tried to reform the Texas House like the grassroots wanted. And we weren't successful today, but that doesn't mean that we can't be successful in the Texas House this session. And the grassroots are going to be pretty upset with some of the people that voted for Burrows. So I am worried for them at this point.
I think the Texas House is very fortunate to have Dustin Burrows as Speaker of the House right now.
Representative Jared Patterson of Frisco is among the Republicans who back Burrows.
Let's be very clear. David Cook's vanity project in running for Speaker, when he knew he had no pathway to become Speaker, he knew that he couldn't get within 20 votes of winning the election. He empowered the Democrats to pick the Speaker because he's the one that split the party.
We asked Representative Cook for a response, but we didn't hear back. In a statement released after the vote, Cook said, quote, "We sparked an important and long overdue conversation about the need for reform within this body." Remember, you can watch all our interviews from this week's show on our YouTube channel. Just search CBS News Texas and click on the subscribe button. That's all for Eye on Politics this week from the Texas Capitol. I'm Jack Fink. Thanks for watching. I am listening, and we are listening to you at CBS News Texas. And from all of us here, have a great Sunday.